Got it. Ooh, I'm gonna take a second or two and just sort of calm. Feel your breathing. A lot going on in the world right now. Take a second or two, just feel the breathing kind of deepen. This activity doesn't stop, but just a little fainter, starts to clear a bit. It's back at the speed of thought. So focus on the breathing. As this starts to deepen. Feeling of calm, possibly. Stillness, another word. Well, since they like the word emptiness, doesn't mean vacant. So sometimes the breath, as you kind of get a little deeper with it, becomes a gateway into what you might call a quality. Words like stillness or emptiness or calm. I know one thing that Albert Einstein said, I now bask in the silence that was so painful to me in my youth. Silence, stillness, calm. In a lot of ways, we say, well, okay, I'm done. There's all that's going on there. This is to escape it. No, so kind of get deeper into that. You are a being in that calm or still or empty. And okay. So it's just a quick process, which you can work on your own, take a little deeper. Okay. One of the things I kind of want to mention is Netflix has, they used to put it on there. Now they've re-upped on it, Servant of the People. It's a comedy, a Ukrainian comedy. And that comedy stars the current president of the Ukraine. You've probably heard about it, maybe you've watched it. But we've been watching it on this, and I think we're up to about episode 10 or so. It's about 23, and it ran about 3 years. It's very interesting that the whole thing is about, I think it's high school history professor who gets caught on camera by one of his students ranting about everything that's wrong with his country, all the corruption and everything. It gets posted, goes viral, and all of a sudden, he's a celebrity, and the students want him to run for president, and so he does, and he wins. Largely on the basis of that video, he becomes president of Ukraine. And of course, Zelensky, the actor, Zelensky, the president, after 3 years or 3 seasons. It wasn't that it got canceled, it's just that he decided to actually run for president. And guess what? He won. So from the character in a TV sitcom to the current president of the Ukraine. Bingo. And sometimes, it's almost like, okay, you've got a stage. Leads to a larger stage. And it's really interesting because, you watch him, let's say you watch CNN a lot. He's obviously on quite a bit. And then you watch the sitcom, and, he's president, right? Not quite dealing with what he's dealing with right now as the real president of the Ukraine. But he actually started his own political party. And the title of the show is, Servant of the People. And so that was his political party. And so it's interesting how that does happen sometimes. And, you excuse him because a lot of times on there, he's nowhere near as well shapen and everything as he is on the TV show. His country's at war, it's being invaded. Okay. But he's kind of the focal point, he's holding it together. And yes, there's an area right now, where it's a war, so it's that. But, the older meaning of martial, Budo, martial way, okay, is not this. It's about the spear, but it's really about two spears. Stop the spears. That's the older reading of Bu or martial. And so, if we kind of go from President Zelensky, both the TV character, now the actual, okay. It's really interesting how that works, isn't it? To, let's say, O Sensei. If I was to start a show about O Sensei, I would use somewhat the same title. Servant of the Universe. Servant of the Universe. Two spears, fire, water. Stopping the spears means to kind of really, in some sense, there's a harmony. See, sometimes Aikido is called the art of peace, but the term that O-sensei used is a wako. Is harmony or accord? Peace sometimes is an idea. It's like, okay, why can't we just get along? Well, we don't get along because we don't get along. But this and that, fire, water, and harmony. Fire doesn't burn the water off, water doesn't drown the fire. Accord. Stopping the two spears from whatever. And I think the way our sense would put it, it starts here. So in our own system, we have a mind, we have a body, we have a, sometimes they're at odds. Finding that calm, that clear, that empty, not empty as vacant, but empty as empty, that transparency. Where, to some degree, I mean, there's a funny area there, it's like, okay, we'll invade because they really don't like the government. They're really here. But all of a sudden, this time they go here, and all of a sudden, the people on the other end say, no, we're not you. We're distinctly us, and you're coming this way. So, and so there's a misjudgment. All right, okay. we'll just invade and win. It's like, no. So you get two forces this way. And the real tricky thing right there is, yeah, there is a war right now. And so it's an interim period. Ideally, the two come into accord, into balance with each other. And of course, through the harmony or the accord, there will be a level of peace. One thing that O-sensei kind of mentioned is, don't make an opponent. Somebody's coming at you. No, it's a fact. But in my own mind and heart, there already is that out there. But then again, in here, I'm creating something out there that I'm in opposition to. So the Aikido philosophy, sometimes we tend to think, well, it'd be nice if that were all over the world. Sensei was very ahead of his time. So we start here. We start trying to, like, for example, the breathing. I'm sort of making it up. In breath, fire, out breath, water. There's a balance or accord. There's a deeper balance or accord. Even deeper balance or accord. It keeps going. As that deepens, then a lot of what's in here, thinking about something like peace, but stillness, calmness, transparency, clarity. Now, what happens there? This is still apparatus going, but it's not following all that noise. This is what goes, okay, our enemy. Yeah, we have real issues here. Let's look at them together and resolve it. Okay, so anyway, that's so much going on in the world. Sometimes we kind of, what's Aikido's role in that? I don't think you can hate the Russians. There are people, a lot of them don't like what's going on either. Okay. So on the other hand, yeah, there are real missiles coming and children dying, and it's ugly. And there's turmoil sometimes with that. You don't want to, okay, I don't want to think about it because it's just your system's still reacting to it. So yeah, so look at this deeper. It's pretty clear. But when I kind of touch this area, I see things clearly. I kind of see what the Aikido here is. I got up this morning and I just did a prayer. Actually it's about a 25-minute prayer, but it's where you do things like you include the people in the country of the Ukraine in that. They're fighting for their native soil to some degree. Somebody, when I visited Russia in 1989, they told me the difference between duch, which is spirit, and dusha, which is soul. And duch is upper, it's light, and dusha, soul, is grabs you. And what the Ukrainians are fighting from is soul. And the soul then, of course, ignites the spirit. And I think what the Russians are finding out is that, when you get a country that's soul and spirit kind of on the same table. It's not going to go like, okay, these are pushovers. This will be over in a couple of days. No, it's a month. Negative of a month, more people dying, both sides. So we're kind of in a, how should I put it, a very difficult place because, we're affected by that. We are. We've basically taken, to some degree, an active role, mainly by providing weapons, welcoming, the Ukrainians that are displaced. Economic wars are on some level economically fought. Even in the war, the weapons, the movement of troops has to be financed. Now, there's that, and there's also, well, why don't we go in there? And all of a sudden, a nuclear war comes, and that's, we don't know. We don't know exactly how stable the other side is right now, especially at the top. So, it's very difficult. Stop the two spears. And so that's cutting edge. It's in the moment. And sometimes when you think about Budo, martial art, I'm doing martial arts, we do weapons, right? On the other hand, do I really want to fire long-range missiles at other human beings? Not really. So we use the martial forms to train something in here, go back to the root of martial. Doesn't mean, I got the better spear, so screw you. It's just like whether we stop the two spears. And then it goes into O-sensei's thing. We talked about Take Musu. Take Musu Aiki. And Take, I thought, my mind says, okay, that's bamboo. That's, bamboo. Okay, but the Take is an older reading of Bu, stop the two spears. And Musu is an older reading of the verb umu, to give birth. So, Take Musu Aiki, give birth to the true meaning of Bu. That is, you stop the two spears. Then you give birth to, see, the two spears, instead of, they start to work as cosmic parents. What comes out of the universal fire, water, yin, yang, light, dark, whatever you want to call it, or the Aikido movements. So if we kind of go back to the root of things, sometimes it's good to do that because there's other than that, it's just the world doesn't make sense. Okay. Anyway, we're going to stand up and move in just a little bit. I'm just checking. So anyway, that was a little bit of a lecture to start. I didn't expect to do it for that long amount of time, but any thing you want to, any discussion that prompted? Going back to the original, because we're doing a martial art. We pick up weapons and stuff like that. And it's like, oh my God, there's a war going on. There's a war going on in here. Mind versus body, whatever you want to call it. So putting that into a court allows us to kind of see the situation out there in a much clearer way. Anybody care to comment? You don't have to, by the way. Anybody?
Hi, Sensei, this is Cliff.
Yeah, Cliff.
I just keep coming back to, the crucible in which Aikido was forged, which was World War II, and Sensei having the bad luck of being a citizen of the bad guys country, right? I mean, they were the aggressors, and they were in league with the Nazis, and they were pretty terrible at that time in their history. And he had to, deal with the fact that this war was happening and he couldn't stop it. It was bigger than any one person. And that, there was a lot of brutality being initiated by his own government. So, in this war, it's pretty terrible, but, on the plus side, we're not Russia right now, right? Like, we're not in Russia. So,
yeah, I mean, in this particular thing,
yeah, right.
Am I really mad at the Russian people? No, my anger is towards one person, who's pretty much in charge of all those people. I'm not, because I mean, a lot of the Russian soldiers don't want to be out there. Morale is very low because, they don't want to be there. Their spirit is really not behind the person who gives the orders for it. And it's a shame that, there are Russians dying too. I mean, that's a point where I was listening to President Biden yesterday, because he's in Poland, and somebody asked him about something, and he just said, "Look, I didn't really intend to run, but I listened to this one guy, where he was talking about, the incident, nationally about the Nazis, and there was activity there, and then a certain person said, there are good people on both sides, and there were atrocities, not the level of the war committed." And he said, good people on both sides. And then Joe Biden said, that's when I decided to run. It's tricky because in a lot of ways, there's an area where, you got Republicans, you got Democrats, you got conservatives, you got progressives, you got you got a country, high inflation, gas prices over $6. So we're going through a lot here. It's not a war, but it's a situation that reflects the fact that, boy, this whole planet isn't being run very well. And one thing Sensei said, he said two things in the Secret Teachings, if you go back and read them. One is economics is the basis of society. Okay, you can really criticize, the Russian oligarchs and everything like that. That's the other thing, in the Servant of the People sitcom is, there are the oligarchs there. They want to run everything. Most every episode is kind of the oligarchs talking about what they're going to do. And then there's kind of this guy, Zelensky playing basically now himself as the president. This was some years before. And, he rides a bike to work. He stays at home with his family. He's not living on he could be living in a palace, but he chooses to be of the people. Okay. And so, when you kind of get that, you realize that, the same thing here, same thing world over. That's why the sanctions are actually important, because, economics is the basis of society. And when you get too much at the top and everybody else down here is struggling, this is what you get. The other thing that Sensei said is Aikido is true democracy. One thing, that he kind of, I think, if, because, he and the Sensei talked a bit. And I think he ever said, I'm better than people because I'm Sensei. He says, no, I'm kind of like you. It's just I kind of found something that I like to share with everybody, because, if you like what I am, then you have that inside you too. So if that somehow motivates you, in your training. He didn't think of the Aikido training as just learning technique. He really thought about Aikido training as learning about yourself and the universe and things like, the two forces, the two spheres, and how they can start to work together or work in accord with one another. And, they can give birth to not just technique, but, the nations could operate off the same thing. Economics would flow. There wouldn't be everything at the top and then everything, there'd be trickle down and really real trickle down, and you get inflation out of control and everything like that. He kind of had in his own way, a celestial map for it. Okay. And sometimes maybe we don't appreciate what he did. And, did he really, could he stop the war? No, he was given that assignment a couple of times if you read his, stuff. Yeah. The Kami told me to stop the war. A couple of times. Kami told me to stop the war. He also said that, he kind of knew that Hiroshima and Nagasaki, he could sense that was going to happen. He knew something like that was going to happen. He could feel it. And the other thing he told Nado Sensei is one of the most difficult things for you. If you think he was kind of like, okay, and there's a cloud, he said, no, he could feel the children burning when the bombs hit. I mean, if you were Superman, you could fly to the Fortress of Solitude, get out of everything. But you can hear almost everything that's going on in the world. So yeah, I mean, he's not, Sensei wasn't Superman. But, he was kind of plugged into the universe, feeling itself in a way, felt itself through him. And so, now, I got to turn CNN on. We can kind of see what's going on in Ukraine, but he could feel it from where he was in Iwama when he was farming. Yeah, he could feel the children burning. And that's a frightening thought, sobering. You don't necessarily get away from pain. You basically, in some sense, we dull it with all this eye activity, right? So anyway, anything, I know Audrey, you have anything, you don't have to say anything, but do you have anything to add before we get up and start to move a bit? Don't have to.
Sensei, I thank you for addressing these issues because they're so heavy on my mind.
Well, they're heavy on all of our minds right now. We're as bad as things are here. We're not in the Ukraine, being hit by long missiles.
But also, when you work with ki and energy, like I do some volunteer work with a children's private school, and they don't know what's going on, but they're all at the day it started, they started acting out because they can feel it from the adults.
No, the whole planet is a field of energy.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's the way it's supposed to be. I mean, Obi-Wan Kenobi, when they said, where did Alderaan go? Doesn't exist anymore. But before then, Obi-Wan and the first Star Wars movie, there's a vast disturbance in the Force. Yeah, we all have some of that. And that's the whole thing. I mean, if you make war on somebody, you're also making war on yourself. And so, when this stuff is kind of set in motion, I don't know what else to say, but yeah, the children pick it up. The children maybe more than adults. That way we got too much stuff on our mind, so to speak. The eye is too noisy, but kids, yeah, there's a lot of energy moving right now. So, the thing that O Sensei did is, I mean, he prayed. You know, I actually, you know, stuff started when I do my prayers. I include, you know, the Ukrainian people and country in it. I mean, you know, if there's a guy that, in some senses, you know, I mean, Zelensky's a hero. I mean, it's not, you know, basically what it is a little bit is that one thing that the war can create, doesn't have to, is heroism. Because the other thing Osensei said, he says, with the spirit of Budo, a nation goes to ruin. If we look at our own nation, and you know, if there's any good that comes out of this for us nationally, is we see something acted out that to some degree unifies the country. I mean, there's kind of, you know, certain elements of the far right that are pro-Putin and pro-Russia, but the vast majority of the country can see what's going on. And you have, you know, certain aberrant people, some of them in positions of power or influence that kind of, but then they become much more visible. And it's really too bad that, you know, there has to be a war and children have to die when there is a war for us to see things this clear. That is, I think, you know, again, we think, well, since it was enlightened, he was past that. No, he felt it more than we do. He didn't need CNN to let him know what was going on in the world when he would pray or something. You know, the energy field that was the world, but to some degree was talking to him. He didn't need the satellites and everything to actually get a world or a universal view. And sometimes we don't realize that. But if you kind of read his stuff, you know, he's really talking about world situations. He's pretty clear on that. And, you know, he gets in some sort of criticism because, you know, he hung out with a lot of far right people. Yeah, he taught police, he taught military. I'm sure he had his own views, but off of what you know about him, it's like, yeah, you know, I got family members that are Trump people. Okay, they're still family members. What do? It's a free country. And all of a sudden, I'm going to cut those people off. No. You just realize that's your point of view. I know that's tricky. Anyway, anything else before we get up and do some movement? Okay. Okay. Now, we are now, this is my simulation of a spirit. Okay, I like this because it's a walking stick. It's not sturdy enough, as far as I can tell. You know, the bang bang, you know, with sticks and stuff. But I never think of this as a stick. I really, it's a spirit. And again, we go back to the original reading of Boo. Stop the two spirits. All right. Okay. So let's change up a little bit. Start with movement number 5. So this is already a martial position. But the whole thing about this is, how do you stop the spirit? Well, the spirit in me is my own judgment, my own hatred. And one of the things about the thrust, we're creating space. Now this is tricky because, okay, I'm letting the country being invaded. One thing right here is all of a sudden, boom, that's the blend. Don't you see that we're really one right here? Or conversely, it's like, I can be both off the line and stop the spirit before it gets started by saying, let's talk this over before boom, we do anything. Okay? So there's that particular thing. Now, so just in the basic thrust, it's an opening movement. It's not okay. We're attacking. And the movement of the hips opens, but the movement of the hips empowers my thrust. But my thrust goes out as a spiral to stop the other spirit. So that's movement 5 to 6. And now 7 is both an up and a down. Up and a down. 8 is a repeat of 6. 9 and straight places. Now right here, for example, this is more, see that this can be a striking movement, but with the spear, there's a point, but there are also edges that are sharp. So this can also be, it's a cutting motion, not just a striking motion, different. Boom. I can yell at somebody, maybe yell harder, or I can try to communicate. So if something's coming at me, I can try to stop the spirit. Let's negotiate for that. And likewise, this is a hard one because the arms cross here. Right here. Boom. And turning at the hips. It's your also line, but the turning of the hips powers. You're negotiating from strength. Boom. So those are movements 5 through 10. So 6, 7, both up and down. 8. Boom. And straight places, feet straight places. This is 9. And this is 10. Okay. Now the very first movements, 1 through 4, we'll go into because they're important in terms of stopping the spirit. Okay. All right. Stopping the 2 spirits. But we're just highlighting the movements and maybe things. So Aikido is not an attacking art, even though this would appear to be an attack. But notice how, see, I am going in a very direct way, but the hips rotating, the body opening, the thrust is in a spiral, which allows you to be off the line. See, if we just go this way, somebody else goes that way, there's a clash of forces. Here we're right at we're stopping the 2 spears. And I'm not going to do that. It's just that both of our spears are stopped in that moment. Stopping, showing the opening. So those are movements 5 through 10. Since we're kind of here, I'll change my angle, changing the grip of the left hand thumb space. My turns, cover my head and my feet. Step in 11 and 12, 13. Okay. So we did a change right here. First change, all the way from the first move to 10. Thumbs face away. Now, with 11, your position here, thumbs face each other, second change. Okay. Now the second change. There's still that spiral action, so you don't do that with your arms. Body is opening, which means you're off the line. Boom, you're stopping the spear. Not attacking, stopping the spear. Likewise here, same thing, we're off the line, we're stopping the spear. 13, okay? Now 14, we make another change. Right hand, thumbs towards me, and 15. So we've gone from the first 10, 11, 12, 13, movement 14, movement 15. Okay, so I'm changing the angle because it's hard to, but I can do it this way. 11, 12, 13. Now, change 14, 15. Okay. 16 is complex. Go back to thumb space, right hand. Catch with the left, you're back to the first change. Step, turn, pivot, cut. That's 16. Seventeen. The thumbs face away, but it's different. Okay. Now, for example, here we go into what we call basic blend position. Mirror, somebody grabs your wrist. See that motion? The weight settles under. There's motion, then you add that. Then you turn and pivot. That's the basic blend. That's in movement number 16. Okay. So from here, now 16. Thumbs face. Thumbs face the same direction. We'll be going towards your step, turn, pivot. I don't say strike, I say cut. I always think spear. 17. The hands stay firm but not tight. And the weight of your body settles underside. Okay? If you've ever had to like pick up a big sack of rice, why is it hard? You pick it up, everything settles to the bottom. That's the feeling here. You don't put your weight out there. That's 17. Okay. Now, thumbs face each other. 18 is a thrust back. 19, thrust forward, thumbs face each other. 20. Now, what I'm doing here, I don't want, if it's sharp, cut myself, but I'm going to bring it into the body. And this is either create space or thrust back. It's 20. Okay? So from this viewpoint, Jason, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, change of grip, right hand, grip with the left, step, turn, pivot, 16, 17. Okay? So we're just going through that. Now, again, the changing of the body. Now, in the attack point, this is to stop the attack, stop the spear. One spear educating the other spear. Stop the two spears. Same thing with the cutting motion. Not to this act, even though I'm doing it, is to stop both spears. Okay? Some of the real subtleties of the language, take, musu, ai, ki, bu, take. Spear is in the original, not the sword, spear. Okay? Now, $11, $12, $13, $14, $15, $16, $17. Thumb space, 18, 19. Rotate the hips. Don't swing it out there, but also don't poke yourself. 20. Okay? So that's first two sections. Okay. Now, the last, okay, 20. This is a sweeping motion. Somebody is coming in. What you're doing is, again, stopping that. The sharp cutting point of a spear is right here. You're stopping. Stopping the spear. So I'm coming in. 20. 122. 22 is this position. Okay, now here, this is like a knife jigging. I grab the wrist, the knife cuts my wrist. Here, I extend, take it, turn that away, so I can move in. So that's the go-kill change. 23. Okay, now right hand lead goes right, goes left. Okay, this is very important. It's what I call the two-handed figure eight. It's 23. Okay, 24, step back into the number 5 position. 26. And now this is the first what I call the fire water changes. Come down from the top with a step back. 27, left hand up, right hand down. We're going to turn now, the fire water change. Thumb space away, grip. This is light 16, except, see, this is a sweeping motion. In other words, not just a cut, but we're sweeping. Yeah, it's 28. Okay. 16 was, yeah, turn, cut. 28, sweep all the way, step, turn, cut. 29, what I'm doing is turning the hip, about to change size and I'm holding something sharp, so keep that there. Thumbs face away. I don't want to do that. I want to make sure that goes back safely. Right hand regrips, left hand holds in the number 2 position, and that's 30. Okay, so the full movements, okay, at 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. Okay. Oh, it's ironic that I'm wearing number 30 because his signature move is a step back shot. Okay, so for whatever reason, it's like Zelensky playing the president of Ukraine on a sitcom, and then all of a sudden being elected president. Step back. Boom. Okay. Movement number 30. Okay. Did I do that intentionally? Maybe not. But it worked out. The math worked out that way. Okay. So, for example, I'll do the same thing the other way. Where we go right, left, cover. 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28 is a sweep, not just a cut, but a sweep covering the back. Step turn, pivot. It's 28. Okay. 29. Say, I don't want the tip here because it's going to come blade towards me. I'm actually rotating the hip. Put in on the other side. Left hand, right hand, left hand. Step back 30. Okay. Now my hope is, for example, here that as you a little bit better here, boom, boom. The last couple of moves, maybe you're gonna take a flow to them. Okay. And I thought I'd do a little bit. Movement number 1. Original beingness, original consciousness, whatever, it's really too big, right? Movement number 2 actually starts with the grip. Now, what happens, for example, on the floating bridge of heaven, Izanagi and Izanami, left and right, with the jewel spear, stirred the heavenly brine. Now we're stirring up and down. So we're going to stir. So that's stirring, but we're, and boom. And through all that, boom, the islands of Japan were created. Okay. Then we go to movement number 5. So there's a little bit for me some symbology. Original beingness, consciousness, room. Had to kind of divide into 2 to create. Izanagi, Izanami. With the jewel spear, they stirred the heavenly brine. Boom, brought into being the islands of Japan. The body, I'm physical here. Boom. I'm also bringing myself into being. Boom. Off of the original yin yang. Okay, so that's my symbology. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I'll slant a little bit. 6, 7, 8. It's both up and 7 is both up and down. 8. Boom. 9, boom, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. Okay. So we have a couple of minutes. And the reason, we kind of talked about certain things, and then we basically just went through the 30 movements. But, there's an area where we need to re-educate ourselves that what we're trying to create is the seeds for Take Musu Aiki. Because any one of those forms can be aggressive martial forms. And movements 1 through 4 start with a symbology where, let's just say Izanagi represents one spear, Izanami the other, fire, water, yin, yang, light, dark, whatever you want to call it. And what do? They're unified around a creative action. The spear represents that which allows them to come together. They're not fighting each other for the spear there. And boom, create the islands of Japan. Well, to some degree, we exist in fighter realms. Boom, we're here in a body. So boom, we're sort of creating or recreating ourselves to kind of, in ritual form, stand on that floating bridge as Izanami. Okay, so that's kind of my particular reference point for that 30 movement set. Anybody with a comment? Because I guess we're about to end because it's so close to 1 o'clock. But anybody with that explanation go and make things a little clearer?
That was some
Yes,
great
it was
detail.
helpful to review the hands movements. Thank you.
So basically, you're able to follow what I was saying.
Yes, could you please post this one because the hand changes were very helpful to me.
Could you repeat that, because it kind of came across in a way that I couldn't quite pick it up.
Sorry, my voice is not well.
It's okay. I understand.
The hand changes, they were very helpful. Could you please post it so I can review today? Thank you.
Sure. I mean, in fact, I'm doing that with San Jose State students right now. We actually had to start out online for a couple of weeks. So I just figured what we do for the skills testing is go through each of the 10, first 10, second 10, third 10. And that would be that. We're doing other things like ukemi and things like that. But, it's interesting. It's easier to teach a form than it is try to teach them, the Aiki essence through form. So I'm taking them into that as well, but we're also kind of doing the 30 movements there. Anyway, so that's my basic, I don't know, just around the 30, because in some sense, you're holding a spear. It's not a long range missile, but it's a weapon in a posture that they could be seen as an attack posture. And so it's very important to codify that when we're doing Aikido and we're doing weapons, we are different. What we're trying to create is Take Musu Aiki. And, I'm somewhat creating this conversation as we go. But the Take Musu Aiki, Take Bu, stop the 2 spears. What does that mean? One level, right hand Izanagi, left hand Izanami. They create, they don't fight. In fact, the spear in that represents the actual unifying thing. I mean, now the question is, could Izanagi and Izanami create the islands of Japan without the jewel spear? They're kami, so maybe, but they had to come together around something. So when Sensei is talking about Bu, right? What does that jewel spear represent? I mean, that's open to a lot of interpretations, but what is the original thing that binds Izanagi, Izanami, so that they together stop the spear, takemusu, create, give birth to, well, the islands of Japan or Aikido movements. Okay, so that's my interpretation for the moment. It's subject to, as I deepen, hopefully, then that comes into clearer perspective. Anything before we go?
Just that this was a really useful detail work on the 30 movements.
Yeah. I mean, there's details. I mean, literally, we're not, that war in the Ukraine is not going to just sort of end by itself. It's going to have to be a detailed sense for, even if you're negotiating peace. You see, the details. So on the other hand, the devil is in the details. I believe he was Ukrainian, but one of the most famous writers, Russian authors of the 19th century was Nikolai Gogol, and he was Ukrainian. And his, one of the phrases that is associated with him is the word Poshtlust, which almost has no translation in English. But what probably the best way of trying to define Poshtlust, it's almost like the Russian word dusha, soul. Even though we have that word, it's translated into English as soul, dusha. It's more of an experiential thing. I don't necessarily have it because I don't have a Russian soul because I'm not Russian. I don't have a soul. But in that sense, that's one of the reasons why Ukraine, Russia, it's very interesting. Well, we're just going to take over. We're one. That's a misreading. There's a Ukrainian soul. I'm not going to just give this to you. Tyranny always exacts its own price. So one of the things, with the actual sense of the movements. Now, what I was planning on doing, but we kind of went through the movements in more detail, is that we are that's all the action to some degree of Izanagi, Izanami, stirring the heavenly brine. And the drop just to come in, symbolically, it's the islands of Japan, but those movements give birth to Aiki movement. Aiki movement is to unify, to clarify, to communicate. Not the two spears contesting to see which one is stronger, but really the two spears stop, and then they become Izanagi, Izanami on that bridge. And what is that spear? Nado Sensei was sort of asked that on a broadcast. And he says, what binds them together? That's the law. See, for me, this is, the law is probably very individual, what that law is. What binds Izanagi, Izanami, allowing them to create the islands of Japan, standing on that place of unity, a floating bridge, heaven, earth, water, fire, are in balance there. Love. In those sense, I said it, takimusu aiki is the art of love, the martial art of love. But he wasn't talking so much about, the human concept of what love is. It really it includes that. That's important. It includes that, but it's a much broader, deeper sense of that word. He's talking about universal creative archetypes or forces. Okay. So anyway, let's see. Today's Friday, so we will be in Mountain View on Sunday. Okay. And hopefully we'll discuss or kind of go a little further on some of this stuff. So I thank you for tuning in. I'll see if I can get David to post this one kind of quick, because it's a good one.
Thank you, Sensei.
Thank you, Sensei.
Okay.